Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So we start the second part. Our topic a little bit more philosophical than the previous one. Epistemology. I'm sure everybody knows the word and its relation to education. So let me try to explain what epistemology is. And then we can gradually, inshallah, continue from that. Epistemology is a branch of philosophy which deals with the internal processes of knowledge. In order to explain certain things, I invented my own terminology. So that's why I will have to explain it a bit later. I just want to say that in general, epistemology is concerned with knowledge processes. How knowledge or learning process takes place. When I put it in this way, then you understand that it is intimately related to education. Right? How learning process. Because acquisition of knowledge is obviously learning something new about something. So this I express with this concept of, again, process. Knowledge processes are operations of our knowledge system. So that means we have a system, and we can call that knowledge, and we utilize that system in order to acquire knowledge about things. So elements involved in an epistemology as parts of our knowledge system are what kind of things we are using when we use our knowledge system. Number one, the first element is the nature of knowledge, as in the question, what is knowledge? What do we understand from knowledge? We have to give a definition. I believe my definition is correct, but I still call it working definition so that, okay, I don't say it is something definite, because for the past human history, I don't know any one single definition that has been accepted by all the philosophers, all civilizations. There is no such thing. They have different definitions. Number two, faculties of knowledge. What kind of faculties? If I use another term, probably it would be easy to understand what we mean by faculty. The organs that we use when we try to acquire knowledge. For instance, when I write something, I use my hand. When I want to look at something, I use my eyes. So that means there are certain organs that we use. But what about when I want to learn something? Which organ do I use? Some people might say, I use my mind. But then mind is not an organ. So why don't we call it an organ? You can say brain. Brain is an organ, definitely. But mind is not an organ. So if it resembles an organ, that's why. So as a result, we don't call it organ because it's not something physical. It is something beyond physical, so we call it faculty. Quwwa in Arabic. Quwwa. As you know, quwwa, actually, there is a T at the end, right? Means power. In English, you can use the word power also. The power of intellect. It is used. So these are called, normally we call it, in epistemology, we call it faculties. Number three, explaining the function of each faculty in acquiring knowledge. What kind of function does it perform? At the moment I just gave you, I said mind. Mind is, again, it's a vague concept. We have to be more specific. I'll give you something more specific, imagination. Without imagination, you cannot acquire knowledge. It's impossible. So that means it's a faculty. But then, what is the purpose of what does it do? So what it does, we call it its function. What function it performs. Or sometimes, we use another term, we say operation. The operations of our imagination, the operations of our mind, the operations of our knowledge faculties. Okay? So number 4, what is the complete system of these faculties? When you bring all of them together, okay? What can we call it? I call it knowledge system, of course. So it's called system of knowledge or knowledge system. This approach, I think, makes it easy to understand and explain epistemology. Normally, if you want, you can check. This is what I say. You can check all philosophy books. You will not find this terminology. I invented them to just explain, make it a lot easier. Philosophers don't do that. But if this is the case, if they should have this approach, to knowledge, to epistemology as knowledge system, it makes it a lot easier to explain. So how does knowledge acquisition take place in that case when we start using it? We won't go into details, of course, but briefly I will explain, because it is extremely important for education and educational systems. Educational theory, educational methodology, it is related to all of them. Very comprehensive. A little bit later I'll explain this. Then I think we can understand. So process of knowledge or knowledge process. What are the objects of knowledge? You see, if you want to learn something about something, say I want to know what this is, then we call this object of knowledge, because it becomes an object for my knowledge. So this terminology we should learn from time to time. We'll be using it. Philosophers use this very commonly. Then what is the limits of human knowledge? How much can I know, right? Epistemology provides an answer for that also. If we continue to explain the knowledge system, it will be better if we use biology. Why? Because as you know, in biology, they explain things that take place in our body based on the functions of the organs. If there are some organs, more than one, in other words, they all work for the common function, they make up a system. For instance, all those organs that contribute to digestion, we take them together and call it digestive system, right? Because they work for the common purpose. If you take any biology, I don't know if we have any biology teachers amongst us. They can explain very good. I know they can explain much. You can explain much better than me, since in biology they explain these things. I can't remember exactly, but I think like they say there are 5 organs involved in digestion and another 5 contributing it. Those contributing ones, for some reason, they don't take it as part of the system, but they mention it all the time. Like pancreas is helping liver, right? And gallbladder, these are the helpers. But somehow they don't include it in the digestive system. Digestive system, from the mouth until intestines, and that's it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there are 5 organs involved. And then there is nervous system, blood circulation system. All these systems, their function is the same. They work for the common function, but they never work independently. It's not possible. If they work independently, then our body as a whole will not be a system. So our body, the complete body as a whole, is also a system, which includes all these systems within itself. So they always work, in unison. Otherwise, when we see something, we'll do something else. It will become complicated issue. I am saying that So far they discovered 11 major organ systems. 11 systems, and you can see all of them here. They are counted. I take this from the internet. You can see the link below. Okay, within the bodily system. I say no, it is 12 systems. It's not 11. Yeah. But why they don't count it in biology? Because in biology, they count only the organs that they can see, cut, and, you know, in knowledge system, you cannot do that. So as a result, they don't include in biology. Then we study it in epistemology. So it becomes a subject matter of another discipline, which is called epistemology. So the knowledge system. In that case, we have to say what kind of organs are involved. In epistemology, there are some organs that are involved, and these are primarily 5 senses. Okay? We don't count the brain in epistemology because we cannot study it in epistemology. But we don't disregard it. We accept it also. The brain performs a function in knowledge acquisition. But we say that, you know, what is achieved in knowledge cannot be completely explained based on brain only, brain activities only. It's impossible. So far, they have not been able to explain. So if they are able to explain, good, we'll accept it also. Neurologists. But recently, one of, in Üsküdar University, by the way, Üsküdar University has a very good brain studies. They have complete one huge hospital devoted for that. Brain and nervous neuroscience, in other words. And they work in collaboration with some American brain studies institutes. The one at Üsküdar University is the largest in Europe. So the rector of the university, just a few months ago we were talking, he said recently they discovered that you see, when the brain gives the command for the organs to act, as you know, with the nervous system, probably the instruments that they developed were calculating the times involved, which is extremely short. It's not easy to detect that time because very fast. But now, he says, they were able to discover that before the brain gives the command, it waits for about 100 of a second before it gives. Waits, when something happens, then it gives the command. And they don't know why. But he says, of course, our interpretation is that it is in contact with the soul. The one that actually gives the command is the soul, not the brain. So the brain waits to see if it will ask him to act or not. But this timing is extremely short. It's not easy to detect. But recently they detected in the West. But of course, you know, Western approach, Western scientific tradition, right? They don't immediately say, so therefore this comes from the soul. They don't say, they say, let's search, see what happens behind this. So whether they will find something, we don't know. So what I am trying to say is that physically speaking, they cannot explain all the knowledge processes. It's impossible. So far, they have not been able to. That is why we have to accept the existence of imagination, faculties that are not physical, in other words. But they have... Yes.
Recently they discovered that the heart has 70,000 nerve cells. And now they think that actually you think and you decide through your heart, and the execution comes from your brain. And that's Islamically so correct. So subhanallah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually I have the video for that, but I don't have time to show it. That's another thing that they discovered, that heart in certain cases works independently of the brain. Doesn't wait for the brain to give order. It has its own nervous cells. So this is something, and that's why the Quran refers to the heart.
I think this is also an experiment showing that there are 3 levels of intelligence: the brain, the heart, and your body.
Right.
3 levels of intelligence there.
So, inshallah, in future they will discover many other things. And by the way, I don't know if you heard of Professor Alan Godless. You know, his name is Abdul Haq in University of Georgia. He came here. He gave an excellent seminar. Actually, we published it. I wish I had the book, actually, you know, in English and in Turkish, both. He said recent, you know, neuroscience studies in the West is coming more and more closer to the Sufi understanding of heart. But he says, if we don't help them, they will fall into materialism again. So they need our help. We need to study and try to show scientifically that this cannot be physically explained. Some spiritual things behind it that should be somehow accepted. Otherwise, it's impossible to explain everything completely. He said, I am scared. I hope they won't fall into materialism again. If they continue like this, you know, they will be able to come more and more spiritualistic approach, especially in neuroscience. Hopefully, more developments take place. So that is why in Islamic epistemology, we developed 3 kinds of organs and faculties that are involved in the knowledge system. The first ones are called 5 senses. These are physical, completely physical, you know, and they have organs, okay? So, and then the second one we call faculties, like intellect, imagination, memory, and so on. And number 3, in Islamic tradition, these are called lata'if. They are not even called faculty because they are so fine that it is extremely difficult to detect. And the chief among the lata'if is the heart, the qalb, in other words. And then the Muslims, they also called it other ones that are higher and higher when you go. And then this ruh, sir and sirru sir, they go like that. Sir, secretive organ. They can't find a name even to call it. It is so fine to detect and so difficult to develop it also. Every human being, they have all these faculties. But it depends on you whether you develop it or not. If we give example, you know, from the physical thing, you know, sometimes, as you know, we have so many muscles, right, in our bodies. If certain muscles you don't use, gradually you lose it. It doesn't work anymore, as if it is not there. But it was there, you didn't develop it. So physically it is the same. Even sometimes organs, you close one of your eye for 1 year or 2 years, you become blind. Because it says, okay, loss is, if you don't use it, that means you don't need me, so I will kill myself. So as a result, if you don't use your spiritual faculties, gradually they die out. And the Quran refers to this, that خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ وَعَلَىٰ سَمْعِهِمْ وَعَلَىٰ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, because they didn't use these spiritual faculties. As a result, Allah closed it down. And then they won't be able to see it anymore. So that's why the Quran constantly warns, don't do this, so that you close your spiritual faculties. If you close, whatever we tell you, you won't be able to understand it. So try to develop it. That is why our Prophet always said, you know, it is so good if you fast on this day. It is so good if you follow the fasting procedure of our Prophet ﷺ, maybe like 300 days a year you will be fasting. Very difficult, right? So it is not easy to develop this spiritual faculty. It's very difficult also. And that is why. And then he says, of course, you know, it is not fard to pray tahajjud, but he constantly praises, do tahajjud. It's all because of this. You see, these things, they develop. You know, and then when he saw, for example, something good happening, and he immediately goes down and then he says, praise 2 rakat for shukr, right? So these things, they develop these faculties. That is why he was encouraging. And if you develop these, your approach to science, education, knowledge, that changes everything. And you become, in fact, more successful in those sciences also. So as a result, this is then the basic faculties that are involved: sense faculties, mind, mental faculties. Mind is a general term in English. We want to be more specific, right? This time, when we are more specific, so mind is not just one faculty. All the mental activities are done in our mind. So what do we have in our mind? I will mention it later on. Our imagination, memory, intellect, intuition, will, all these faculties are in the mind. So mind includes all of these things. So it is the center where conceptual activities are done, mind. And in Arabic, dhihin, sometimes we refer to these things that exist in our mind are called wujud dhihni, mental existence. In other words, mental existence. Knowledge is mental existence primarily, because it exists in our mind, right? If there is something knowledge outside my mind, it's not knowledge anymore. You cannot call it knowledge. Like this telephone is not knowledge, it is an object. But if I start expressing things about the telephone, it's knowledge, because it's in my mind, it's not outside anymore. So knowledge has to be in the mind, okay? Besides this, in Islamic epistemology, there is a fourth element they add is, I call these external sources, therefore we don't include it in epistemology, I just mention it. Because Muslim scholars, they always make a reference for this, khabar sadiq, as a source of knowledge. This is not a faculty though, you know. So it's an external source. There is a reason for that. Our great scholars, they included this because revelation, we are not living with our Prophet ﷺ, right? So then how do we know he was a prophet? How do we know that he received revelation? How do we know that this revelation he received is true revelation that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So all these things are told us by previous generations, and we have our mind to read and understand and see if this is true or not. So, and this, what they tell us about him, like the Quran that we have, is tawatur. Because tawatur means the first generation, it's not, the report does not come from 1 or 2, 3 persons, but a whole community. They say, yes, we approve that this is the revelation he received, and now we give it to you. And then the next generation says, yes, we received, we give it to you, until time we have it. As a result, today, you look in the Muslim world, there is only one Quran. There are not 2 Qurans. There is not even a Quran in which one word is different than others. There are different qira'ats, which is also universal. Every Muslim accepts it. So as a result, this is what we call, it is true report. So we accept that this is definitely what he received, and until our time it came intact, without any change. So it is because of this they included. Otherwise, this is not part of epistemology. Epistemology is not concerned with this. Now here, functions of our knowledge system, it has 2 functions, external and internal. What do I mean by this? External, if you want to know something, you can acquire knowledge about it by studying books, asking teachers, asking others from your environment, from your educational system. It's all from outside. Now, this kind of knowledge acquisition we call education. Education is concerned with that, and therefore it is external. Epistemology is concerned with the internal process, not the external one. Internal process means, as soon as I see this thing, what kind of things begin to take place in my body, and then at the end leaves the knowledge of this thing. So I am concerned with this is epistemology. Very difficult, isn't it? education is a bit easy. But you know, this makes epistemology and education as brothers and sisters. They are intimately connected with each other. So without epistemology, education would be difficult. So if a teacher knows at least some epistemology, he will be a better teacher and can teach you know, more successfully. Because it is the same process, external and internal one. He doesn't have to be an expert. General idea, you know, general idea is sufficient. And of course, if you know epistemology, most Western educationists, you know, they know epistemology very well. And that's why they are able to develop educational methodology, how to teach new methods and so on. When I study their methods, I understand very well. I know what kind of epistemology they are using. So that is why our educational philosophers, Muslim educational philosophers, you know, if they learn epistemology, they can develop new theories.
So the question I ask is, if you were to explain that to a teacher, say in Islamic school right now, in simple terms, how would you do that?
How would he do this epistemology?
Yeah, just so that, say for example, like you said, it's important, right?
Yes.
If I was to take today and I had to go and teach this to a bunch of teachers, how would I do it in simple terms?
Okay. For instance, I wouldn't go into this kind of a detail, but I will give you a bit detailed information about how our intellect works. You know, for instance, our intellect always proceeds from the known to the unknown. Okay? So that means if there is something in front of you that you don't know, then what will you do? You will start searching for your previous knowledge and then see if they help you to understand that thing. Okay? If not, then you start searching. What kind of things will help me to understand this thing? You will start searching for those things. When you find them, then you say, okay, now I understand. I can explain this, and you start proceeding towards that. So when you apply this in the school, for instance, you know, you start teaching the student, you know, let us say, you know, a certain kind of formula in mathematics, but you have not taught him multiplication, you know, other mathematical or arithmetic, you know, procedures, and you just start explaining that, he won't be able to understand it. Why? Because to know that unknown thing depends on certain things that he should learn first, and you haven't taught those things. So as a result, you should realize, you know, what to teach first, and then next, this order. We can give even more, you know, examples for this. Also, you know, like our mind is able to understand concrete things better than, easier and more directly and very fast than abstract things. But now you want to teach him something abstract, and you have to teach because this is education and he has to get the knowledge of that thing. What will you do? You will start giving him analogies based on concrete things and present in front of him. This is what they usually do, schools actually, right? They put things, see how you do this and so on, with this hand and so on. And then at the end he says, okay, now explain me how you proceeded. He starts telling the order, right? So from that order, his mind, because our mind, whether you want it or not, works in this way. From those concrete things, his mind immediately rises to the abstract thing, learns it very fast. But suppose you don't do this and you start immediately explaining that abstract as abstract, he won't be able to understand. It's impossible.
Can I just add to
Yes.
that? That's an amazing example. Another thing that when we do sensorial learning, we basically understand that the senses, we need to teach the children how to use their senses, how to link the previous knowledge to what they are observing.
Yeah.
So all of these things for the educators are important in teaching teachers how to communicate the knowledge.
Right.
Yeah, so this and this is what is missing, especially in Islamic schools, because in Islamic schools, you know, you're hiring a teacher who's maybe untrained, doesn't have any background, and you're expecting them to go in the classroom, and then especially when you're asking them to produce their own resources, the point you just made now about making sure that the knowledge is age appropriate and based on what they have already, something they have already learnt, that's why these concepts are vital to make sure that we can, when we're communicating knowledge, when we're teaching, that we have this foundation.
Right. Also, I am sure as teachers, you know, you probably heard or maybe even read Piaget, his famous, you know, learning skill, you know, how they develop, which he, after he developed it, remember, he called it genetic epistemology, right? So genetic epistemology, genetic because it is fitri, you know, it is in our fitra, in other words, right? That is why he named it like that, because that is the way our mind is working. So the way our mind is working is explained in this epistemology.
Are you talking about Bloom's technology? Are you talking about Bloom's technology?
Yes, that is also another one. Yeah. And it's all based on epistemology. But of course, they don't refer to epistemology without refer because they think, you know, you should know that.
I just have one question. Generally, when we went through the training system in the UK, they use the term pedagogy.
Yes.
So now, just building on what you said, first of all, I mean, in terms of, especially mathematics, early mathematical development, and Bruner, kind of Jerome Bruner, he kind of mentioned concrete, pictorial, abstract.
Yes, yes.
So, in terms of epistemology, can it translate to pedagogy in terms of knowing how children learn?
Yes.
So one is that, I mean, we had this kind of training where we were told that for a teacher, you need to have the knowledge of the subject where you need to teach some mathematics, and I need to know about mathematics.
Right.
You need to have knowledge of the child, what type of child is he or she, how do they learn, you know, what's their kind of background and then the knowledge of pedagogy,
Yes.
of how children learn mathematics.
Yes.
So would epistemology come under, or would pedagogy come under epistemology?
Yes. Definitely. But they won't make any direct reference for that. Why? Because if they go, you know, into epistemology, they cannot develop the pedagogy so much. So as a result, they assume it that you learn and you know it. So as a result, my discussion today, without reference to pedagogy. What?
Are you taking the broader term is epistemology?
Yes.
You're just taking a subsection of that and defining it as pedagogy.
Yeah, exactly. So as a result, now I want to give you, I would like to say, you know, something like this. You know, we need a model in epistemology. Obviously, we cannot develop it completely independently of the contemporary developments in epistemology. You know, because epistemology, you know, is not a discipline that falls under, like we say, well, I have to have an epistemology that is completely based on the Quran or revelation on Islamic. You cannot say like that. Because epistemology is something universal. It works the same way in every human being, whether you are Muslim, non-Muslim, it doesn't make any difference. So in that case, we need to see what kind of developments took place in epistemology in the world and try to utilize that also. My understanding is that even today in the West, there is one model that is used. They may not refer to it directly, but it is Kantian model. And it is this one, actually. I just put it under one simple table to see what kind of model he developed. He says all knowledge begins with experience. Okay? everything, even including your belief and things like that, you know. So then whatever things come through that, there is one faculty which performs this function, and he calls this sensibility, or that is the way they translate into English. You know, he wrote in German, of course. If somebody knows German, maybe they can tell us. Do you remember what kind of word he is using? For sensibility. Yeah, you cannot tell because, you know, the Sinnlichkeit.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. He's using that word, and they translate as sensibility into English.
Seligkeit.
Yeah, and then he calls it also faculty of experience. Namely, all experience is done with that, and then whatever accumulation comes, he calls that raw material. Very interesting. I like it a lot, you know, this raw, because it explains everything very well. So raw material, as you know, in factories, right? When you have raw material, you put into the factory, it starts working on it. So our understanding, namely our mind starts from that. As you can see on top, I put mind. So it starts working on that raw material. Namely, it's the conceptual operations, okay? I shouldn't go into details, don't forget, because this is too detailed. Categories, schemata, and principles, they are all certain functions, functions of our mind, in other words. And then whatever developed there, sent to the reason. And then reason produces knowledge. So this is the knowledge process, according to Kant. More or less, this general model is accepted today. They may not refer to this, but this is the thing they use. If we want, we can reduce this into two only. Experience, mind, finished. Make it simpler. This is a scientific procedure they do. Yeah, the output. And the output. Yeah, that's a good way of expressing it. The input comes from there, and then the output is in the reason. Finished. So, but if we go into details, I made this model. If you go into detail, every single faculty involved, every philosopher will not accept this. Okay? So, where did I get this from? All of the philosophers. Whatever they said about epistemology, I try to put in here to make up a more complete model. Yeah, this is more complete. So the process begins at the senses, that is faculty of experience, right? That's where it starts. And then the process of knowing, knowledge process begins, internal senses, and then proceeds, continues in the mind, and then the knowledge is produced there. But in Western epistemologies, they don't include heart. Qalb is not there. They don't. Kant did not include, because he thinks it is something subjective. Why should I concern myself? But Muslim philosophers, they say, subjective truth is stronger than the objective one. Because in subjectivity, you find itmi'nan al-qalb. Okay, Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. You see, as the Quran says, so Muslims take, our source is the Quran, of course. Because of that, they say, without the heart, knowledge is not complete.
I have a question. Would you say this is why secularization and taking the Western knowledge has led Muslims to disassociate with those things that in Islam that they can't reconcile with their reason?
Yes, yes. Exactly. This is the probably one thing that leads to that, you know, the secularization. And our sister, thank you very much that he brought up this issue of the heart also. That now closer and closer, I hope neuroscientists will come, you know, that the heart functions for knowledge also. But hearts, the knowledge produced by the heart is not conceptual. It is experiential. So you feel it, in other words. It is something like this. For instance, I give you an apple, I say, taste it. And when you taste, you know the taste, right? I tell you, what is the taste? You say, I cannot tell. Very different. Sweet, but a little bit sour, little bit this, little bit. You see, you have difficulty, right? But you know what it is? But that knowledge is experiential. It's not conceptual, because you have not been able to convert it into a concept. If you do, and everyone tastes and uses that concept, it becomes universal. That's what Muslims did with heart. So when I read Ibn Arabi, Al-Ghazali about heart, whatever they say, I understand why. Because I have the same feelings. Every human being, they have the same feelings, but they don't have the same concepts. So as a result, in Islamic civilization, it becomes universal. So, and because our culture, history, constantly they explained, our previous scholars, because they lived this and they told us, so we live the same experience. So as a result, the concepts became universal. So as a result, it is as if it is objective. So I call this subjectively objective knowledge, which is universal.
Hocam, is there any specific name for it in Muslim civilization? Specific term that Muslim ulema put a name?
Of course, they have names for all of these things.
Subjective and objective.
Right.
For example, there is
Right.
like a term in Islamic civilization.
Yeah, of course, they have like ma'nawiyat and things like that, and also even for the faculties, lataif, they call, and which faculty produces it also. So, well, mushahada is more like observation. It is.
The 3 levels of yaqeen.
This is another yaqeen, yes. Haqqul yaqeen, for example. Itmi'nan, the theoretical knowledge that we receive through the intellect is always open for doubt. Always open. It doesn't mean that you have to doubt, but it is open for doubt. Al-Ghazali shows this very well. Descartes showed this also very well in his meditations. You can doubt until you reach itmi'nan. But itmi'nan is experiential. You experience it. That means you ate the apple. Now you know it. Right? So it is like that. So this, therefore, the heart is included.
Just ask one question about, you mentioned Kant before.
Yeah.
It was experience and then reason.
Yeah.
Experience and reason.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, for Muslims, before experience is revelation. So where would revelation come then?
You remember we put that as khabar sadiq, external source, as a guide.
Okay.
Yeah. This process is continuing, right? Like this. As we continue, we need light, because we are walking in the dark. And that light is the revelation. Muslims discovered the heart because of the revelation, not by argumentation. They didn't discover it because the Quran mentions it, because the Quran talks about our nature. Allah created us, so that means He knows how our body works. And in fact, He works our body. We don't work. We don't govern our body, right? Our body is governed by Him. We just make choices and He runs it for us. We don't run our body. Is it understood the way I explain it? That is why Ustaz Nursi, he says, Inni lastu maliki. I don't own my body. I don't own myself. My Rabb who created, He owns it. It is His property. It's not my property. He created me and He gave it to me to use in this world, in this material world. And He runs it for me. When he runs it for me, then I shouldn't worry about my body. But I am supposed to take good care of it because it is an amana, right? It's a trust given to me. It's not my property, it's a trust. If something is given to you as a trust, you cannot use it as you like it. You have to use it according to the principles the owner gives to you. Use it in this way, use it in that way. And otherwise, why should he say there is halal, haram? Why should he give us? This is haram, don't do this, do this. Because he said this is not your body, you have to do it like the way I say. So these things are very important. The best way to understand this is through epistemology, actually. I understood this only. In Lastu Malik, I was reading his book so many times, I never understood. And when I studied this, I say, oh, because when I explain this, another thing is this are my students. When I tell them, you know, your mind works like this, like that, and they tell me, I probably learned the word hocam, right? Already in Turkish. Like it's like my professor. Hocam, I just, oh, I know, I never think about my mind, I just use it, I work. I said, this is very good. This is why you explain it like that. You know, when we are trying to, you know, learn something, we don't start thinking that we don't, for example, we don't say, let me first see if there is experience, let me get experience. Okay, I got it now. What should I do? Let's my imagination put into action so it works. Okay, and then now my mind comes, let's produce the concepts for it. Do we do like that? We don't do it. So I will use a word which I hate to use, but that unfortunately explains it the best way. So, but we know what I mean. My mind works automatically, but it doesn't work automatically. Just to explain the process, I have to say it like that. It works automatically because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala runs it for me. It's not in my hands to run my mind. It's in my hand to think in what way I use it. Because He gave the choice for, otherwise I wouldn't be responsible. You know, think like this. I will give you a criterion. When you do something, if at the end something is produced in existence, you have not done it, because it involves creation. Okay? But if you do something, at the end doesn't lead to something in existence, but rather an action that comes, that means you have done it. You are responsible for it. Okay? Because you have made a choice. So choice does not have an existence. That's why it's not created. You know, you just choose it, right? So choice does not involve existence. Action involves existence. So action is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is where the Mu'tazila made a very big mistake. Because the Mu'tazila tried to explain human responsibility based on the idea that they clearly and openly they say, we are the creator of our actions. That's what they are saying. This is wrong. Because creation is involved. Creation, Allah doesn't let anybody to create anything. This is against ahadiyya. The ahadiyya principle, wahidiyya principle, immediately rejects this. There is only one creator, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no other creator at all. Okay? So as a result, something that does not have an existence but leads to a result very grave. Responsibility. You see? That is the choice. So this choice makes us very responsible. There is one more thing. We are given a consciousness that we have done the action. That consciousness is given to us so that we realize our responsibility. Otherwise, we would say, well, I am just making a choice. It's not important. Allah does it for me. We would say that. But He said, no, you have done it also. Because we have that consciousness. I did it. We always say, I did it. I went there. I came. I ate. Then we realize we are conscious. We are responsible. But in the true fact, you didn't do it. Allah did it. Allah ate it. Allah went. But you are saying, I went. When Ibn Arabi said this, they said he's kafir. Look, he thinks he's God. He didn't mean that. He didn't mean that. He meant for you to say that you are not the one that is doing, because it involves creation. I don't know if this is clear or not, you know. These are all side issues, I am sorry. It's not epistemology.
I just remember from actually this senses and mind description in their duties in human spiritual body in a way. Remember in Damascus sermon, Ustaz Zursi gives a quote about the functions of the human senses and faculties in a way.
Yes.
I just remember that paragraph, like will, mind, emotion, and some of the inner faculties, which constitute the four elements of the conscience and four faculties of the spirit, each have an ultimate aim.
Yeah.
So the ultimate aim of the will is worship of Allah, and the mind is knowledge of Allah, and the emotions is love of Allah, and that of the inner faculties is the vision of Allah, which is mushahadullah.
Yeah.
And the perfect worship known as taqwa comprises the four.
Yeah, very well.
And the Sharia both cultivates these and corrects them and takes them towards their ultimate goal.
Yes. The faculties and their purpose, their end, for which they are created. Yeah, it's a very good statement, I think. If you share it will be very good. Now again, the same table that I just show you with an animation. Because I made these students are able to understand much better. This is another thing our friend he was asking about the epistemology, what kind of method we can develop. So these are the methods that I develop also. Because I know when they see with their eye, it is easier to understand. One thing I would say, our scholars, they say that knowledge goes through the ear, not through the eye. So that means speaking is also very important. You know, I can give you one example. In history, we know a lot. You have, I'm sure you have also seen that. There are many scholars who are blind. But there is no single scholar who is deaf. And this person who doesn't, he cannot become a scholar. Impossible. Even he sees. Knowledge goes through the ear, not through the eye. Okay, but probably now they are able to develop certain methods how to teach them and so on with the sign language and things. Probably, I don't know if in future there will be any. Have you seen anyone, any scholar cannot hear? Any scientist? I have seen great scholars in Western universities who are blind. They don't see, but they teach. They are professors. Right? You probably know also, there are great, in the Muslim world also, there are great scholars. They were deaf, sorry, they were blind, they couldn't see. But I don't hear, I have not seen, so this is, probably this shows the significance of some faculties. I don't, that's why the Quran refers to that a lot, right? Also.
Google mentions four scientists who are the ALPARSLAN, Andrew John Cannon, John I don't know what, and something.
So that means, yeah, I said very recently. So there are, so they developed new methodology to teach them. But it is easier, you know, blind person goes among the scholars, remains, because their memory becomes very strong. Because they don't see. When they hear, they have to preserve, so they memorize. And science is based on memory also. So probably, maybe in future, there will be more scientists who are deaf. They cannot hear, but as I said, yeah. Okay, so this is then, you know, a little bit based on that, the beginning of knowledge process with the senses, sight, hearing, and so on. And then when knowledge is produced, as if the process ends, I am saying this, but it never ends actually. Because you see, this explanation of a process is concerned with one specific instance only. You know, we are human beings. We are particular beings. We are not universal beings. As a result, we will not be able to understand something in totality. We always have to break it down into small, small pieces and understand those pieces. Later on, our mind is able to combine them. Then we understand the totality like that. So as a result, to explain this process, also we cut off one single instance and explain that, and then after that we can continue. So as a result, we consider as if the process ends, but it actually continues. It never ends. So that is what I have to say. So then the beginning starts with material, concrete things, right? With the senses, and then it continues like that. So these perceptions of senses are combined, okay? They are combined. So that means when I see something, and if I hear a voice or sound from that thing, I am able to combine those two. But this combination is achieved with another faculty. The eye cannot combine with the ear. It's impossible. They are independent. They work independently. If they remained independently, we would think that there are two things. When a bird starts singing, we think there is a bird, we think there is something else, sound is coming from that. But it is the same thing actually. So how are we able to combine? We have another faculty, and Ibn Sina calls this common sense, common sense. Al-hiss al-mushtarak, common sense. In English they use it. After Ibn Sina it became widespread. Everybody started using. In the West they took it from Ibn Sina also. Okay? So this is, I call it sense consciousness. There are reasons for it. Anyway, we can continue. So knowledge process continues here. So as you can see, like level by level, 1, 2, 3, 4, continues like that. There is sense intuition involved here. This is the lower intuition actually. There is also mental intuition, but that is conceptual at the higher level. So that means this intuition is involved within senses. It is related to experience also. Leads to self-consciousness. It leads to self-consciousness. And then at the fourth level, we enter the mind. All these accumulations go into the mind. So mental process begins here. Okay, so this is the mind. All the previous processes are sense experience, you remember, from Kantian theory also. Okay, so in the mind, first mental consciousness. Remember, the first one was sense consciousness, which is feeling. It is physical. It's not mental. Okay, physical. This is mental consciousness, which leads to selfhood, as Ustaz calls it, ana, in Arabic, the I. Okay, and then imagination takes over. Mental consciousness converts the raw material, as it was called by Kant himself, right? Raw material, turns them into mental existence. We can, in English, we can say mental entity. Mental entity, which is not clear. Imagination makes it clear. So as a result, it can recreate, in other words, in shapes, if it has a shape. Which means it becomes easy to convert into a concept. And the intellect, our actual mind, sometimes we refer to it as mind, but this is intellect actually, aql, in other words. Dhihin is mind, but aql is intellect. Sometimes they call reason also. Yeah. So this turns it into a concept. So when it turns into a concept, it becomes knowledge. Until this stage, it cannot be called knowledge, actually. Okay, because human knowledge is conceptual. It is conceptual. If it's not expressed with concepts, you cannot call it knowledge. Okay? So knowledge is produced. That means now we are able to say, for example, this is telephone. I can call people with this telephone. The telephone is red, and so on. Whatever things with all the concepts you can explain now. But here, primarily, we have judgments. Judgments. And this judgment is achieved, okay, as a result of the will. Because judgment involves choice. So this is the ability that is given for us for choice, okay? Because in philosophy, we use this terminology, I have to use this term. Okay? Otherwise, in Islamic, tradition, it's called juz ikhtiyari. Right? Individual choice. Individual choice. So this is the will. So there is another final state, the fifth one. Our mind reaches inferences concerning the object of knowledge based on the logical relations between the judgments. Okay? So, for instance, I have two judgments like this. They say that all humans are mortal. Socrates is a human being. I can see the logical relation between the two and infer a third one. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Or I see, another judgment, I say, the streets are wet. Okay? If it rains, streets get wet. So therefore, I say it has rained. Sometimes we omit. Our mind is very fast. It works. When you say, oh, it rained, but you didn't say the first two, the mind can omit those two. It makes it short because it assumes it already. It has already acquired.
The heart, what is it?
The heart? Okay. So this is achieved by mental intuition. All of these are collected in the memory. And the second, there is another beginning here. So this is the sixth one actually. Mental entities, abstract objects. Justice, goodness, evil, these things. For this thing, you don't have to go to the concrete anymore. The process is within the mind itself. But it already has an accumulation. On the basis of the accumulation, starts evaluating those concepts. However, if we go spiritual beings, this is the heart. But then we go back because it is a faculty of experience. It's not mental. Heart is not something mental.
This is the chronological order. This is how it happens. We go finish the mental intuition and then we feel it.
No. You take all of this as a whole, it works like that. Because I have to go in an order, that's why I went like this. Actually, the heart is always there. Because when from concrete senses it continues, it passes through the heart. But if there is a relation to the heart, it stops there and then goes to the mind. But now, because we are concerned with the concrete things, it has no relation to the heart. It just passes straight to the mind. Okay? So it depends on the object of knowledge. Yes. Right. So that is why I had to explain in the process in this way. Otherwise, in the order, it's not like that. So it depends on what we are studying, in other words. So all of these things are based on the object of knowledge, okay? So this object, in the Islamic sense, actually this is more or less a repetition of this one. So I have to go a little bit faster. This, again, you see, I put the feelings here. So the heart is there already. Because when I perceive, for example, this is something concrete, right? Something concrete. I see telephone, when things I perceive from this starts going through my mind, then immediately it passes through my emotions. I say, what a beautiful telephone, right? So something, a feeling, emotion is involved. And the evaluation in the mind is based on that also. But you see, feelings have intensity. The physical senses, they don't have intensity. They are more direct. What do I mean by intensity? When I perceive this, my sense of love can increase and decrease. But its color will not increase or decrease. It's just color, red or so. It is like that. So depending on the increase and decrease of the feelings, the result in the mind will change. Yeah. So it is a bit more complicated.
Sorry. How does this work with your short-term and long-term memory?
It depends on the object of knowledge again, what you are talking about and what kind of accumulations in the mind also, how much you have concerning that thing. So if the mind is able to combine the long-term and short-term memories, it is able to judge on the basis of that. If what you mean by the long-term, something that we have learned in the past, very distant past, it depends how clearly it is in your mind, in your memory. Based on that, you probably produce the judgment.
I think there's also the process that in terms of short-term and long-term memory, when you use a certain thing, information, repeatedly, it goes to the long-term memory.
Exactly.
And if you don't use it, just flip over it.
Right.
It stays in short-term memory.
Right.
How do we balance that with this?
Sorry, not only that, we just started to mention about feelings. So our long-term memory is also attached to feelings and intensity. It's not just repetition. So this is why there's a whole kind of approach of experiential learning.
Right.
Experiential learning, because you went through the experience, then your memory now attaches to the experience. So if you just give a lecture and just give rote learning, the students generally do not have the capacity to retain the information. But if you put them through an experience and they reach that conclusion, then they're going to know.
Also, your psychology is involved in this case, for long and short-term memories, depending on maybe related to subconsciousness also, because you see it, you are not aware of it, it really affected you a lot, and you never forget. Although it is a long-term memory, it acts as if it's a short-term memory, right? So when we continue, then this is the process in the mind. Okay, all these things continue like this process. This explains, more like a list that I give here. But now I give a detailed explanation of the experience. Experience takes place at 3 levels. We are not probably aware of it. So, and these levels are based on a certain ontology. So, ontology, as you know, it means the things that exist. Okay. So, the object which I try to understand may be something concrete, may be something abstract, may be something spiritual. So, there are 3 kinds of ontologies here in this case, right? As each one of these we can take as levels in experience. Why levels? Because, as you know, concrete things are direct. Everybody immediately we experience it. Mental thing is not like that. It is a bit difficult because it is abstract. So as a result, I would consider that as second level. Okay, so the first level of experience, primarily referring to the physical things. I put here shahada because in Islamic, this is taken from the Quran, of course. Shahada, ghaib, right? 2 physical realms. The verse that uses this usually refers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as alimul ghaibi wa shahada. He knows the physical and non-physical. Ghaib is very difficult to translate into English, right? So they usually translate as the unseen. But I mean the unseen, that means you don't see, so it's not real. It's not a good translation, but anyway, there is no other word to use for it. So we have to use it. the unseen. So this first level definitely refers to the physical, the senses and so on. And the second, the abstract one, is based on mental return. Second level of experience, abstract things. And then the third thing is the realm of emotions, third level of experience. This has again two phases, two stages. The first, because I didn't go into the epistemology, you might have hard time to understand my terminology here. I say the first stage refers to the in-between realm. In between what? You see, the Quran has repeated verses in the Quran occurs. The samawat wal ard wa ma baynahuma. Yeah, so this wa ma bayn, in between, I refer to that one. The other two realms, the samawat and ard, obviously ard refers to the shahada, physical, and samawat refers to the ghaib. Ghaib and shahada concerned, no problem at all for us. Very clear. We can know the shahada, we cannot know the ghaib. Finished our epistemology. Where is the problem? The problem is wama baynahuma. That's the problem. How do we know that in between? You see, Islamic epistemology is based primarily on that wama baynahuma. To explain that, let me give you this simple explanation. The way I explain it, as if shahada stays there and ghaib stays there, this is ridiculous. They don't stay like that. They are integrated. They stay together. They are intermixed, intermingled. But our mind is difficult to understand this. So I'll consider as if they are separate. Especially the Quran refers, وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا, refers like that, right? As it is here, the other one here. Because it's easier for us to understand it. Let me explain their integrated meaning. Right now, we are in the physical world, right? But at the same time, we are in the ghaib also. The ghaib is with us already. There are many angels behind you, right? And behind us, all of us. There are many angels. That is ghaib. But we don't see it. And we don't know it also. But how do we know it in that case? We know it only from the Quran. Otherwise, we cannot say there are things like this. There are also hadiths, because as you know, these hadiths are based on revelation. Our Prophet is not allowed to talk from his head. And he said that when you go for knowledge, you walk on the wings of an angel. They take you. This is just to express the significance of knowledge. You know, how important it is. But did you see the angels carrying you here? But you see, so that's why they are like that. They are integrated. However, as the Quran explains as if they are separate. Then it makes it easy for us to understand. Shahada here, ghaib here, but then there is in between. But now, in between, there are some things closer to the physical, some things closer to the ghaib, and some things right in the middle. So that means, since we don't know the ghaib, and the knowledge of the ghaib is based on revelation, that means things closer to the ghaib must use revelation more than the reason. But the things that are closer to the earth, shahada, you can use more reason, less revelation. So it depends. That means the proportion depends on the closeness and the far distance. So that is why this in-between realm is important.
Ustaz, there's an ayah it's in the Quran that says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took out of the children of Adam all of the souls, yes, and asked them, Alaste birabbikum, and they said Bala.
Yes.
And some scholars say that is for every human soul, and that we should then know that this is true, that this is the sort of fitri position, that we should know God.
Yes.
Some scholars say, well, we don't know that, because if we did, then we would recall that event happening. How do we interpret that in light of what you've just said?
Again, since this verse refers to the ghaib, for its explanation, we have to look for the revelation. You cannot use your mind, because our mind cannot produce knowledge concerning the ghaib, because this is an event that happened in the ghaib, not in the physical world. It's impossible for us to know it. If it's impossible, that means you are not allowed to interpret. You just accept it as it is like that. Told to us to realize our responsibility in this world, that event. That is why, and it is, remember, it is said in the Quran in such a way that it doesn't lead you to think. But when the Quran refers to something happening in the physical world, the Quran says, look, understand, think. Yeah, but when it is ghaib, it doesn't say think anything, just tells you, and tells you, I mean, this is a miracle actually, the way the Quran says, because that event cannot be told us in any other way in human language. Human language is not able to explain that event. Only as much as it was revealed, it can explain like that. What is the verse that we can use concerning this is in Ali Imran, the first, I think, 6th or 7th verses, that says the Quran has mutashabihat and muhkamat. Some ayats are muhkam, some mutashabih. Don't use the mutashabih. Their meanings are known to Allah only. Yeah, use the muhkam ones. So that means those people, ulama, established in knowledge, they say amanna. We believe in this, and then we follow what is told us. So as a result, we don't try to interpret this verse. We just accept what happened, and that's it. It's impossible to explain it. When you try to explain, people will fall into, disagreements. They start fighting. Exactly. Yeah. Right.
What about descriptions of paradise?
Yeah, we accept it like that. They are physical. Ibn Sina, he says, everything in the Akhirah is, Quran says, so physical. I am sorry, I don't understand it. I have hard time, I believe in it. This is great Ibn Sina, But he says, I cannot explain. In philosophy, it's impossible to accept it, he says, philosophically. But if the Quran says so, I have to accept it, I believe in it, and that's it. So all the physical, jannatin tajri min tahtiha al-anharu khalidina fiha abada, and so on, all these we accept it like that they have things like this, but we don't know how.
There's some people with AI have tried and use AI to bring about the image now.
Right.
But that's fine, because sometimes it's descriptive, right? Like describe. If it's described, it's closer to the mind, so we can picture it. Right?
Actually, it's like most scholars, they said you shouldn't even use, like sometimes they use a worldly picture to describe Jannah or not, or Shaitan, because those are, as we said, it's wrong, it's ghaib, we don't know anything about it. Allah even used the words in the Quran, like he used yet for himself, just to make it more closer to our understanding.
Exactly.
Because Allah has a yet or a hand like us. So we shouldn't use anything that is like worldly image to describe anything that is ghaib.
Yeah.
So how do you explain this to a child in a classroom when he says, why can I not talk about the ghaib? How would a teacher address that at that point?
Right. We can, I think, they won't have any hard time understanding this when you tell them, in fact, you don't even need to tell, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim for a child, the moment you tell him, God does not look like a human being, he will understand it, right? He doesn't look like anything in the world. Anything you describe in your mind, that's not God, because it is incomprehensible as far as we are concerned. They continue asking questions, of course, then how he does this, and so on. To some extent you can explain, just like our Prophet ﷺ, he used to say, people would come and ask these questions to him also. Even grown-ups, I mean not children, grown-up people, you know, how Allah does this, how Allah. So he said, don't think about that. Don't, لا تفكروا في ذات الله.
The one way I've handled this question is generally from a scientific place. I always tell students or kids, I said, look, if I was to ask you, like, first of all, your mind is very limited. The brain is limited.
Yeah, right.
Your power of the brain is limited for the knowledge of the universe, right? It's very insignificant what you know of the universe. So I compare it to, you know, if you had a computer from 1993 and you tried to run Windows 10 today on it, what would happen?
Yeah.
It would come crashing, right? So that is the reason I generally say is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us not to go in that venture in that area, because it will come back with a system error, which is you'll be confused.
Excellent.
And I think that's the way I kind of use that.
And they can understand that very easily. It's not so difficult.
No, so one thing, as far as I know, and from our readings in education, that we shouldn't talk explicitly about God to children below the age of 6, because it's too much for them to handle.
Right.
So explicitly talking about God, we shouldn't do it. Of course, we start teaching them the adhkar, and we talk about the Prophet, the stories about the Prophet with the children.
Yes.
And then gradually they can grasp the meaning of God, Allah, and we can see Allah, and He's not like the human beings, and so on.
Yes. Yeah. So then we have the second stage of emotions concerning the experiential region of the ghaib completely. So we have to be careful. So we are approaching, an area concerning which we are not given knowledge at all. So there are some faculties that correspond to this, but these are all special faculties. And then special faculties, if we want to place it where it belongs, then it will go here, right there in the experience part. Okay? What are they? Our great scholars in the past, they identified them as qalb, ruh, and sirru sir, and continue like that. But then they lead to conscience, faculty of morality, and then sense intuition, which I already mentioned, and then selfhood, that is the ana. All of these things, they lead to an accumulation in our mind. This is the experience part cut off from here and take primarily the mind, what is going on. I'm not going to repeat it, but what is important for us is at the end, the accumulation that happens in the end. Whatever accumulated in the mind is a structural unity, which we call worldview. Okay? The worldview has structures in it, and it emerges in the mind according to that structures. Primarily, it has 5 structures, but not in every worldview. There are different kinds of worldviews. If the civilization is scientific, then they have 5 structures. What are they? The first one I call life structure. That's when we are born, anything related to life, the main concepts and so on we develop, all of them together. The concepts formed into a cluster, okay? Clusters. Our mind registers them like that. You know, our mind does not register knowledge in the form of sentences, okay? Or arguments. That would take more space. Our mind registers them in clusters of concepts. When it is clusters, when we start speaking, our mind immediately goes into action and starts combining the concepts. Okay, so forms them into sentences. So language, sentence construction is a function of the mind. It's not restored in the mind. It is not, otherwise, you know, it would take more space in the mind. And your knowledge would be much more limited in that case. But it saves space. So one thing in Allah's creation is that Allah never wastes. He doesn't waste even a single thing. That's why he orders us, don't waste. He hates wasting. And Quran says, right? You see? Yeah. So as a result, saving is the best thing. So as when we start speaking, we combine these concepts and speech comes into existence. Anyway, so life structure, therefore, these structures are conceptual unities. Namely, concepts related to each other, they are combined like that, okay, in clusters. Larger clusters are called structures. So life structure is the first one that emerged in our mind, when we are born. Gradually, this becomes more and more abstract. When it becomes more abstract, it moves into the foundation, makes up the foundation of the worldview. Now, the abstract concepts, the clusters together, what kind of concepts are they? They are, existence, meaning of life, who I am, where am I coming from, where am I going to, who is the creator, what is the meaning of life, what is the meaning of existence, why is there something rather than nothing. You see such questions, that is the fundamental one. And therefore your belief, everything is over there. And this one is the foundation. So this foundation gives us a framework of mind through which we view the world. Okay? As a result, I call this world structure. So the first one, life. Second one, world structure. World structure becomes more important than life structure. Life structure consisting of our customs, all those things, daily dealings. You can tell from the concept life. The world, the way we look at the world, so it's fundamental. Let me give you an example from Islamic worldview. In Islamic worldview, the world structure is made up of primarily 4 concepts based on 3 notions. 4 concepts. Tawheed, I'm giving you the Arabic words. If you have problem, we can translate. Tawheed, everybody knows. Nubuwah, prophethood. Can you see it's so important for a Muslim? So that means you need to teach this in elementary schools. The concept of Nubuwah, the concept of revelation, books, angels, and so on. And then the third one is Hashr, resurrection, life after death. This is extremely important in Islamic understanding. This is world structure. And the final one is your deeds, what you do, justice, and so on. So these are fundamental notions. We said based on 3 notions, concept of ilm, fiqh, and also khalifa, because that's our identity. Based again in the Quran, inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifatan. This is very important. You are khalifa. You are created as a khalifa to represent Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. He has given us certain purpose to do and achieve. So this ilm separates later on from the world structure. It forms the knowledge structure. So knowledge structure, that is, scientific activities are based on knowledge structure. And fiqh, referring to the moral and legal actions. Our morality and legal aspects are all based on that. This makes up the value structure. And the Khalifa refers to our nature, human nature, and society, political dealings, all based on this. I call this human structure, because human is the fundamental element. So 5 structures are life structure, but the foundation is world structure, knowledge structure, value structure, human structure. Our worldview functions like that. And this is the order also, the order that it emerges in our mind. This is the epistemological. It's impossible. It's not in our hands. You cannot say when you grow up as a kid, you cannot say, let me develop my knowledge structure first. You cannot do that. This is the way the mind works. This is the way it functions, in other words. It's epistemological. If this is the case, educational system must be based on this order also. So that means education will start from worldview, life structure, world structure, knowledge structure, value, and then science and human structure. It continues in that order. So from elementary school going to the higher level, university level, okay? And to show this, remember I said our educational system, this is the table that I tried to show.
Sorry, Afwan. Khoja, can you say that again, the list that you mentioned? Oh, is there? Oh, خلاص.
The process, yeah. This is the table. Yeah, I show it. So you can see the mental development, that is the epistemology actually, which leads to our educational philosophy. Of course, you have to philosophize this. I'm just giving you very simple, very fast. Let me see. If you want, I can send you my article on that, maybe a bit more detailed. If you are interested, you want to read it. Okay, inshallah. So then you see, then the educational theory, the theory leads to the system, educational system, based on this. Early education follows the initial, that means life structure. Elementary education, worldview. Middle education, knowledge structure. Scientific stage, that is higher education. Specialization at the graduate level. Every single student, does not have to go through this. Because this is for those who become scholar scientists. You cut in the middle education because they want to have, profession. They want to go to after the middle education, you send them to what they call is, schools that teach them professions, right? Yeah, training. Yeah. Vocational schools. Yeah, vocational training.
I had a conversation with you before when we were having a cup of tea.
Yes.
And I just wanted to just get a bit of clarity on that, just after looking at that. So, this is quite problematic for us as educators. Because I kind of mentioned that the way that we kind of teach in elementary level, primary level is that we have a set of subjects, take mathematics,
yeah?
And start teaching it straight away pretty much.
Very good.
4-year-old comes and I start presenting objects to them and say, okay, 1 object, 2 objects, start counting, then we build on that. And at the same time, we might do some geography, we might do some whatever, okay? So we do it at that point and we build up. Now, according to this system, mathematics would come at a much later time.
Exactly.
First of all, you have to fix the world view. In other words, understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understand revelation, and then introduce mathematics and science at a later point. So that kind of goes against everything that's happening at the moment in the education system that we know.
Yeah.
Now, to combat this, the way that maybe we went through the system was that maybe we learned about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the ilm of the deen alongside knowledge of other things. And then as we were learning, we were filtering at the same point. So we learned about attributes of Allah, attributes, the things of deen and ilm of deen. And then when it conflicted against something that we learned in the classroom, we filter that and say, okay, I'm going to put that to the side and accept this. That's how kind of we manage the approach.
Yeah.
So the question essentially is, does that mean now that for us as educators, back to the drawing board, because essentially we're redefining how we design a curriculum for our children?
Yes. That means I need to modify my table. That's why tables are very dangerous. You know, because when I do like this, you think like the first one cut off, second starts. Second cut off, the other ones. It's not like that. It's continuous. So that means at the early education, you have some elements from the elementary education you integrate into that one. Otherwise, the student cannot pass. The passage is, you know, gradual. It doesn't stop and start. Starts. It's not like that. It's continuous. So as a result, you have some mathematics in early education also. Otherwise, the student will not be able to pass in when it comes to the middle education, he missed the point. Now he doesn't know how to count. So that means this has to be integrative. It's not like this. But to explain how the system is established, I have to make this table.
But it has to be a hierarchy.
But yeah, the hierarchy has to be there, definitely. Because in every educational system they have that hierarchy. They do. But this hierarchy is integrative. You know, the early education has some middle education, but at that level simple. They don't exclude each other. They include each other, depending on the, you know, proportion. So, but the emphasis in early education cannot be on mathematics. It's impossible. You cannot do that. You are not allowed if you follow this system. And again, in elementary education, you are not going to teach mainly whatever you teach in mathematics in the middle education. You have simple mathematics. It's already integrated into other subjects, but the emphasis is not on mathematics. So if you...
What they do in Finland.
Yeah.
I think it's similar where the child they don't do maths till the child is 7.
You see? Yeah.
No, they do maths. They do maths. They just don't do formal kind of as we understand mathematics. They do certain things, they do the counting and they're experiential, but they won't do formal.
I think it's mainly experiential in Finland in those early years.
Yeah. So I hope it is clear, right?
How many, like, when you say early education, like, is it like what age group when we say early education? Like, because when you go to elementary, for us, it's like a little bit older than...
You know, I am not an expert in education, so I am an expert in epistemology. I cannot tell the age, you know, education philosophers or educationists, they can tell much better than me. I'm just, you know, I am doing this educational philosophy, trying to develop that.
We need to take this, and the people who are in curriculum work, you need to develop it. This is why we're giving it to you.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Actually, you know much better than me, you know, which one should be at what age. You should be able to tell, I'm sorry.
It depends on the age. One more thing, it doesn't mean if we finish the class structure then we're not going back to it.
Yes, of course.
It depends on the community also.
Right, right. And the ability of the students also.
And it should be an experience. It's not just I'm giving him information and he's gonna grasp it and
right.
go on.
Yeah.
It should be we're living this.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, alhamdulillah, it was an amazing, excellent session. You've given a lot of things that we are going to go and think about, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.